He's a thief and a vandal. Arrest him, Dad. Get him out of MY's shop. Rose Patterson's voice echoed off the concrete walls of Patterson Automotive, her finger jabbing accusingly at Louise. Behind the service counter, her uncle David Patterson, the actual owner, stood frozen, his protest dying in his throat as he watched his brother-in-law work. Officer Jack Patterson's smile never reached his eyes as he wrenched Louise's arms, the handcuffs snapping shut with metallic click that silenced the entire garage. "Tighter, Dad. Make sure he feels it," Rose hissed, her satisfaction palpable. The officer obliged, twisting the cuffs until Louise's jaw clenched, while mechanics scattered to the far bays, suddenly finding urgent work that required their complete attention. "You people always think the rules don't apply to you," Officer Patterson growled into Louise's ear, his grip on the young man's shoulder designed to leave marks. Louise's new intern uniform was already smudged with honest grease and oil, but his eyes remained steady, unflinching. Rose was celebrating her greatest victory. Completely unaware she'd just handcuffed the son of Judge Robert McCarthy, the one man in the city with the power to end her father's career and bury her family's legacy of corruption. Hello, amazing people. Welcome back to Echoverse, the home where forgotten voices finds their echo. Before we dive deeper into today's incredible story, kindly hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already and comment below where you're watching from. Your support means to us, and it helps us bring you even more exciting stories. Now let's begin. The morning sun hadn't yet burned off the dew when Louise McCarthy pushed through the glass doors of Patterson Automotive for his first real day. His dark gray intern uniform was crisp new, still creased from the package. He'd ironed it twice the night before, determined to make a good impression. This internship wasn't just a requirement for his automotive technology certification. It was a chance to prove himself on his own merit, without his father's name opening doors or closing them. The garage smelled like every shop he'd ever loved. Motor oil, brake fluid, that sharp metallic tang of grinding metal. 3 bays stretched before him, 2 already occupied with vehicles on lifts. Mechanics moved with practiced efficiency, their hands blackened with honest work. Louise felt his shoulders relax, slightly. This was familiar territory. He knew engines, knew the language of torque wrenches and timing belts. Well, the intern actually showed up. Rose Patterson's voice cut through mechanical symphony, like a blade. She emerged from behind a red pickup truck, wiping her hands on a rag that looked too clean to have seen real work. Her shop jacket was pristine, her jeans unmarked. She looked like someone playing dress-up as a mechanic. Louise turned, extending his hand with a professional smile. Louise McCarthy, looking forward to learning from the team here. Rose's eyes traveled from his hand to his face with open contempt. She didn't move to shake it. "Let me save us both some time, Louise. I don't know what strings you pulled to get this internship, but you need to understand the reality here. My Uncle David owns this shop. My father is Officer Jack Patterson. You might have seen him around town. My family built this business from nothing, and we don't need some required intern thinking he's going to waltz in here and learn our trade secrets. I'm just here to work and learn," Louis said evenly, his hand dropping back to his side. "Whatever you need me to do." "What I need," Rose stepped closer, her voice dropping to ensure only he could hear, "is for you to remember your place. You're not a real employee. You're a checkbox on some school form. You'll get the jobs nobody else wants. Oil changes, tire rotations, cleaning up other people's messes. And if you think you're going to complain about it, think again. Over Rose's shoulder, Louise caught sight of a man in the glass-walled office. Older, graying, wearing a shirt with David Patterson owner embroidered on the chest. Their eyes met for just a second. Louise saw something there. Discomfort, maybe even apology. But David Patterson's gaze slid away quickly, suddenly fascinated by paperwork on his desk. The message was crystal clear. Rose Patterson ruled this shop, and her uncle wasn't going to stop her. Louise felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice steady. Understood. Where should I start? Rose's smile was pure venom. Oil change bay. There's a mess from yesterday. Clean it. On your hands and knees. 3 days into the internship, Louise had learned the unspoken rules of Patterson Automotive. Stay quiet, work twice as hard as everyone else, and avoid Rose Patterson at all costs. The other mechanics, Tommy, an older man with kind eyes, and Marcus, who tried to offer Louise lunch on the second day, had perfected the art of becoming invisible whenever Rose entered a room. Louise was finishing an oil change in a Honda Civic when Rose's voice sliced through the garage. Louise, Bay 3, now. He wiped his hands and headed over, finding Rose standing beside a sleek silver Mercedes S-Class on the lift. The hood was already open, tools scattered across the workbench nearby. Rose's expression was unreadable, which somehow felt more dangerous than her usual contempt. Mr. Henderson's car, she said, gesturing at the Mercedes. Timing chain issue. I need you to hand me tools while I work on it. And pay attention, you might actually learn something. Louise blinked. In 3 days, Rose had never let him near anything more complex than a drain pan. You sure? I can handle. I didn't ask for your opinion. I said hand me tools. Rose was already positioned under the hood, her hands moving with surprising confidence. Maybe he'd misjudged her. Maybe she actually knew what she was doing. For 20 minutes, Louise passed her wrenches, sockets, and screwdrivers. Rose worked methodically, removing the timing chain cover with practiced movements. Despite everything, Louise found himself impressed. She clearly understood engine mechanics. Torque wrench. The big one. Rose said without looking up. Louise turned to grab it from the toolbox. Behind him, he heard a sudden, sharp sound, metal on metal, followed by Rose's sharp intake of breath. When he turned back, she was holding a critical camshaft position sensor. Its connector snapped clean off, wires exposed and damaged. What happened? Louise asked, moving closer. Rose's face had gone pale, but something flickered in her eyes. Something calculating. I don't know. It just broke. This is a $1,500 part, and Mr. Henderson is one of our biggest customers. Her voice shook convincingly. Let me see. Don't touch it. Rose snapped, then seemed to catch herself. She looked toward the office where Uncle David was on the phone, then back at Louise. Her expression shifted, hardening into something cold and purposeful. Actually, know what? I need to grab the replacement part from the back. Stay here. Don't touch anything. She disappeared into the parts room, leaving Louise standing alone beside the damaged Mercedes. He studied the broken sensor, confusion gnawing at him. The brake looked almost deliberate. The connector twisted at an angle that suggested force, not mechanical failure. Rose returned minutes later carrying a small box, but she didn't open it. Instead, she moved the workbench, rifling through the tools Louise had been using. Her movements were quick, practiced. She grabbed the torque wrench, the socket set, even the shop rag Louise had used to wipe his hands, and she pressed them carefully against a broken sensor housing still mounted in the engine. "What are you doing?" Louise asked, alarm bells ringing in his head. "Making sure we document everything properly," Rose said smoothly. She pulled out her phone, snapping photos of the damaged part, the tools, the engine bay. "Uncle David will need these for the insurance claim." Louise's stomach dropped. The way she was handling those tools, deliberately pressing them against the damaged components. She was transferring his fingerprints, his DNA, creating evidence. "Rose, stop. What are you?" "You can go now," Rose interrupted, her voice flat and final. "I'll finish up here. Go clean the Bay 2 workstation. It's filthy." Louise didn't move. "I didn't touch that sensor." Rose finally looked at him, and her smile was the coldest thing Louise had ever seen. "Are you sure about that? Because I'm pretty sure you were just working on this engine. I'm pretty sure your prints are all over these tools. And I'm pretty sure Mr. Henderson is going to be absolutely furious when he finds out someone destroyed his $50,000 engine. You broke it yourself. I saw." "You saw what?" Rose's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "You saw me asking for your help on a complicated repair that you clearly weren't qualified to assist with? You saw yourself getting in over your head and breaking an expensive part because you wanted to prove something?" Through the office window, Uncle David ended his phone call. Rose's eyes flicked toward him, then back to Louise. "My uncle trusts me. My father trusts me. Who do you think they're going to believe? The intern who's been here 3 days, or family?" Louise felt ice spreading through his chest. This wasn't just workplace bullying anymore. This was something far more calculated, far more dangerous. Rose Patterson had just framed him for $1,500 in damage. Maybe more, she convinced him the whole engine was compromised. And from the triumphant glint in her eyes, she knew exactly what she was doing. Louise couldn't sleep that night. He lay in his bedroom staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment in Bay 3. The deliberate way Rose had handled those tools, the calculated coldness in her eyes, the broken sensor that looked twisted, not failed. By morning, he'd made a decision. He arrived at Patterson Automotive an hour early, while the sun was still climbing over the horizon. The shop was empty except for Tommy, who was already brewing coffee in the break room. "You're here early," Tommy observed, eyeing Louise with concern. "Everything okay, kid?" Louise wanted to tell him everything, but the way Tommy's eyes darted toward the office stopped him. Fear was contagious in this place. "Just want to get a head start," Louise said instead. Once Tommy headed to Bay 1, Louise moved quickly. He started in the parts room where Rose had disappeared the previous day. The inventory log sat on a clipboard by the door. Every part removed was supposed to be signed out. Louise flipped back through the pages, his finger tracing down the entries until he found it. Yesterday's date. Camshaft position sensor, Mercedes S-Class. Signed out by Rose Patterson at 9:47 a.m., 20 minutes before she called Louise over to Bay 3. She'd already removed a replacement part before the original one broke. She'd planned it. Louise pulled out his phone and photographed the page, his hands shaking slightly. This was evidence. Proof that Rose had premeditated the entire setup. He moved to Bay 3 next, searching for anything else that might support his case. The broken sensor was gone, presumably locked away as evidence of his supposed incompetence. But the tools were still there, arranged on the workbench. Louis photographed them too, noting their positions. Then he saw it. A small security camera mounted in the corner of the bay, its red light blinking steadily. His heart leaped. If the cameras recorded, they would have captured everything. Rose breaking the part, Rose transferring his prints. All of it. Looking for something? Uncle David's voice made Louis spin around. The owner stood in the doorway of Bay 3, coffee mug in hand, his expression unreadable. This was it. Louis straightened his shoulders. "Mr. Patterson, I need to talk to you about what happened yesterday with the Mercedes." "Rose." "I know what happened," David interrupted quietly. He glanced over his shoulder toward the office, then back at Louise. Something in his face looked tired, defeated. "Rose told me everything. The damage. The customer complaint coming today. I've already contacted Mr. Henderson." "Sir, I didn't break that part. Rose set me up. I have evidence. The parts log shows she signed out a replacement before the original broke. And the security cameras." David's expression flickered with something that might have been sympathy or pity. "The cameras in Bay 3 have been broken for 2 weeks. Budget cuts." He took a sip of his coffee, avoiding Louise's eyes. "And Rose's family. She's been around engines since she was a little girl. She knows this business inside and out. Mr. Patterson, please. I'm telling you the truth." "I'm sure you believe that," David said softly. Then his voice hardened slightly, like a man forcing himself to do something he didn't want to do. "But Mr. Henderson is a major client, and Rose's father is Officer Patterson. I have to protect this business, Louise. I have to protect my family." The words hit Louise like a physical blow. David Patterson wasn't going to help him. The owner knew something was wrong. Louise could see it in his eyes. But fear his brother-in-law was stronger than justice. Louise was on his own. Mr. Henderson arrived at 11 o'clock sharp, his leather shoes clicking against the concrete floor like a countdown timer. Louis was in Bay 1 changing brake pads when he heard the garage doors open, followed by a voice that could cut through steel. "Where's David Patterson? Where's the owner of this establishment?" Louis looked up to see a tall man in an expensive suit striding into the shop, his face already red with fury. Uncle David emerged from his office immediately, hands raised in a placating gesture that Louis had never seen him use before. This was a man who knew he was about to lose something valuable. "Mr. Henderson, please, let's talk in my office." "I don't want to talk in your office. I want to talk right here, right now, about who the hell you let touch my $50,000 vehicle." Henderson's voice echoed through the entire garage. Every mechanic stopped working. Even the air compressor seemed to quiet down. Rose appeared from Bay 3, her timing so perfect it couldn't have been accidental. She must have been waiting, watching for Henderson's arrival. "Mr. Henderson, I am so deeply sorry about what happened to your Mercedes. We take full responsibility." "Full responsibility? Do you have any idea what that sensor damage cost me? Do you know that I had a meeting in Springfield that I had to cancel because your incompetent staff destroyed my engine's timing system?" Uncle David stepped forward, his voice weak. "Sir, I assure you will cover all costs. The part, the labor, any inconvenience." "Inconvenience?" Henderson's laugh was bitter. "I've been bringing my vehicles here for 8 years, David. 8 years of loyalty, and this is what I get? Some careless idiot who doesn't know the difference between a torque wrench and a crowbar. Luis felt every eye in the shop turn toward him. His chest tightened, but he forced himself to stay calm. This was the moment Rose had been building toward. "Mr. Henderson," Rose said, her voice dripping with sympathetic professionalism, "I want you to know exactly what happened. I was performing a routine timing chain inspection on your vehicle. Standard procedure, everything by the book. I had asked our new intern to assist me by handing me tools." She paused, letting the word intern hang in the air like an accusation. "I stepped away for less than 2 minutes to retrieve a replacement gasket from our parts room. When I returned, the camshaft position sensor had been damaged beyond repair. The intern did this." Henderson's gaze locked onto Luis with the intensity of a laser sight. Luis opened his mouth to defend himself, but Rose continued smoothly. "I don't like to assign blame, Mr. Henderson, but the evidence speaks for itself. His fingerprints were all over the tools found near the damaged component. I have photographs documenting everything for our insurance claim." "I didn't touch that sensor," Luis said, his voice steady despite the rage building in his chest. "I was handing Rose tools. She broke it herself, and then she—" "Enough." Uncle David's command was quiet but final. He looked at Luis with something that might have been regret, then turned back to Henderson. "Sir, I take full responsibility for this incident. The intern was inadequately supervised. It won't happen again." "You're damn right it won't happen again," Henderson snapped, "because I won't be bringing my vehicles here anymore. Neither will anyone else I know when I tell them about this disaster. Mr. Henderson, please." David's voice cracked slightly. "We've had a relationship for years. Let me make this right. Free service for the next year. Complete engine inspection, no charge. And I'll personally ensure that the person responsible faces appropriate consequences." The person responsible. Luis felt the words like a knife between his shoulders. Uncle David wasn't even looking at him anymore. The owner had made his choice, and it wasn't justice. Henderson studied David for a long moment, then glanced at Rose, who had arranged her features into an expression of sorrowful professionalism. Finally, his gaze landed on Luis with pure contempt. "I want him fired. Today. And I want documentation that he was terminated for negligence. If I don't have that by end of business, I'm calling my lawyer, and we'll discuss a lawsuit that'll make your insurance premiums look like pocket change." "That seems extreme," David began. "That seems appropriate," Henderson interrupted. "Fire him or lose everything." "Your choice, David." The garage had gone completely silent. Luis could hear his own heartbeat, could feel the weight of every mechanic's sympathetic gaze. But nobody spoke up. Nobody defended him. Fear had rendered them all mute. Rose met Luis's eyes across the garage floor, and her smile was small, private, victorious. She'd won. Uncle David retreated to his office with Mr. Henderson. Their voices muffled behind the glass, but their body language clear. David was pleading. Henderson was unmoved. Luis stood in the middle of the garage floor, every mechanic carefully avoiding eye contact, when Rose pulled out her phone. "Don't bother," she said to Luis, her voice casual, almost bored. "Don't pack your things or make a scene. My father's already on his way." "Your father?" Luis felt ice water flood his veins. "Officer Jack Patterson. I called him 20 minutes ago." Rose checked her manicured nails, utterly unconcerned. You didn't really think we'd just let you walk out of here after destroying a customer's property, did you? That's criminal negligence. Possibly even sabotage. I didn't do anything. Save it for the police report. 8 minutes later, a patrol car pulled into the parking lot, its presence immediately transforming the atmosphere of the shop. Louise watched through the bay doors as Officer Jack Patterson emerged, adjusting his belt with practiced authority. He wasn't rushing. He didn't need to. Everyone would wait for him. He entered the garage like he owned it, his boots heavy on the concrete, his eyes sweeping across the space with proprietary assessment. Tommy immediately found something fascinating to study in his toolbox. Marcus turned his back entirely, suddenly consumed with organizing spark plugs. Rosie, Officer Patterson said, his voice warm as he approached his daughter. He kissed her forehead with casual affection. Then his gaze landed on Louise. The warmth evaporated instantly. "This the one?" "That's him, Dad. Louise McCarthy. The intern who destroyed Mr. Henderson's Mercedes." Rose's voice was sugary sweet. The devoted daughter reporting a crime. Uncle David emerged from his office, Henderson trailing behind him. When David saw his brother-in-law in full uniform, something in his posture collapsed further. He looked like a man watching his own execution. "Jack," David said weakly, "I'm not sure this requires." "Requires what, David?" Officer Patterson's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Requires police involvement? A customer's $50,000 vehicle was damaged through negligence or malice. That's a crime. Or are you suggesting I ignore criminal activity in my own family's business?" The phrase, "my own family's business," hung in the air. David swallowed hard, his atoms apple-bobbing visibly. This was why he'd never stood up to Rose. This was why he'd looked away when she was cruel, why he'd chosen Henderson's fury over Louise's innocence. Officer Jack Patterson had long ago claimed ownership of this shop through sheer force of authority, and David was too terrified to challenge him. "Of course not," David murmured. "I just thought we could handle this internally." "You tried that, and look where it got you." Officer Patterson gestured at Henderson. "A major client threatening lawsuits. A damaged reputation. No, David, this needs to be handled properly. Officially." He turned to Louise, his hand resting casually on his belt near his handcuffs. "Son, I'm going to need you to answer some questions about the incident involving the Mercedes S-Class." "I'm happy to answer questions," Louise said, keeping his voice level. "But I need to make it clear that I didn't damage that vehicle. Rose Patterson broke that censored herself and then framed me for it. I have evidence." Officer Patterson's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Evidence? You've been here less than a week and you're accusing my daughter of framing you? That's a serious allegation, son. Defamation, even. It's the truth." "Your truth, maybe." The officer's hand moved to his handcuffs now, unclipping them with practiced ease. "But see, I've got my daughter's statement. I've got photographic evidence of your prints on the tools. I've got an angry customer threatening legal action. And I've got a shop owner who's ready to terminate your employment." He looked at David. "Isn't that right?" David's silence was answer enough. Officer Patterson stepped closer to Louise, invading his space with the confidence of a man who'd never faced real consequences. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to come down to the station with me. We're going to file a formal report. You're going to be charged with criminal mischief and negligent destruction of property. And then you're going to learn a very important lesson about respecting other people's property and knowing your place. Dad, make sure you document everything, Rose added helpfully. We'll need it for the insurance claim and Mr. Henderson's lawsuit. Already ahead of you, sweetheart. Officer Patterson pulled the handcuffs free, the metal glinting under the fluorescent lights. Luis looked around the garage one last time. Tommy had tears in his eyes but wouldn't meet Luis's gaze. Marcus had disappeared entirely into the parts room. Uncle David stood frozen by his office door, a man who'd chosen fear over justice and would live with that choice forever. And Rose Patterson smiled, victorious and untouchable, protected by her father's badge and her family's corruption. The cuffs felt cold against Luis's wrists. Officer Patterson yanked the handcuffs tighter than necessary, the metal biting into Luis's wrists with deliberate cruelty. Luis winced but didn't cry out. He wouldn't give Rose that satisfaction. He's a thief and a vandal. Arrest him, Dad. Get him out of M.Y. shop. Rose's voice echoed through the garage. Her finger still pointed accusingly at Luis like she was identifying a criminal in a lineup. Tighter, Dad. Make sure he feels it. Rose hissed, stepping closer to admire her handiwork. Officer Patterson obliged, twisting the cuffs another notch. Pain shot up Luis's arms, but he kept his face neutral, his breathing steady. Around them, the garage had become a tomb. Even the sounds of the street outside seemed muted, as if the world itself was holding its breath. You people always think the rules don't apply to you, Officer Patterson muttered, his grip on Luis's shoulder designed to inflict maximum discomfort without leaving visible bruises. Years of practice. Think you can just walk into our town, into our businesses, and take whatever you want. Mr. Henderson watched from near the office, his arms crossed, satisfied that justice was being served. Uncle David stood frozen beside him, his face pale, his mouth working silently like he wanted to speak, but couldn't force the words out. Rose was practically glowing, savoring every second of her victory. This was her kingdom, her rules, her power on full display. Luis took a slow breath. His father had taught him to choose his moments carefully, to understand when silence was strength and when words were weapons. This was a moment for words. Officer Patterson, Luis said quietly, his voice steady despite the pain radiating from his wrists. Before you take me to the station, I need you to make a phone call. The officer's laugh was sharp and dismissive. A phone call? You think this is TV, son? You don't get your phone call until we're at the station, and even then, not for me, for you. Luis met the officer's eyes directly. You need to call Judge Robert McCarthy. Tell him you've just arrested his son. The effect was instantaneous and profound. Officer Patterson's grip on Luis's shoulder loosened slightly. His smile flickered, uncertainty creeping into his expression. What did you say? Judge Robert McCarthy, Luis repeated, louder now, making sure everyone in the garage could hear. The new judge who was appointed to the city's Superior Court 3 months ago. The one who's been reviewing police conduct cases and overturning questionable arrests. That's my father. And you just handcuffed me without probable cause, without reading me my rights, based solely on the word of your daughter, who has a documented history of hostility toward me. Rose's face drained of color. You're lying. You're just trying to... My full name is Luis Robert McCarthy. Luis continued, his voice gaining strength. My father is Judge Robert McCarthy. My mother is Dr. Angela McCarthy, Chief of Surgery at City General. And you just arrested me for a crime I didn't commit in front of multiple witnesses after your daughter orchestrated an elaborate frame job that I have documented evidence of." Uncle David made a small sound, somewhere between a gasp and a moan. His face had gone from pale to gray. He staggered slightly, one hand reaching for the wall to steady himself. His eyes darted from Luis to Officer Patterson arose, and Luis saw the exact moment David realized what this meant. The lawsuit from Henderson would be nothing compared to what was coming now. A federal civil rights violation, an illegal arrest, a conspiracy to frame the son of a judge. His business wasn't just at risk, it was finished. Mr. Henderson's expression shifted from satisfaction to concern. He took a step backward, distancing himself from the scene, suddenly wanting no part of whatever was unfolding. Officer Patterson's hands trembled slightly as he reached for his radio. The confidence that had filled the garage moments ago evaporated like gasoline fumes. "You're bluffing. If you were really the judge's son, you would have said something earlier." "Why would I?" Luis asked calmly. "I came here to earn this internship on my own merit, to prove I could do the work without my father's name opening doors or closing them. I didn't want special treatment. I just wanted fairness." He paused, letting the words sink in. "But you didn't give me fairness. You gave me corruption. And now you're going to face the consequences." Rose grabbed her father's arm, her voice rising to a panic pitch. "Dad, he's lying. He has to be lying. Make him prove it. Make him." "Call him," Luis said simply. "Judge Robert McCarthy. His office number is in the city directory. Or you can call his clerk. Or you can just drive me to the courthouse right now, and we can walk into his chambers together." Officer Patterson's radio crackled. His hand hovered over it, frozen in indecision. Behind him, Uncle David slid down the wall until he was sitting on the concrete floor, his head in his hands. The Patterson family empire was crumbling, and they all knew it. Officer Patterson's hands shook as he grabbed Luis by the arm and hauled him toward the patrol car. But the confident swagger was gone, replaced by barely concealed panic. "Everyone stay here. Nobody leaves. I'll handle this at the station." "Dad, wait." Rose started, but her father's silence with a sharp look that promised a reckoning later. Uncle David remained slumped against the wall, staring at nothing. Mr. Henderson had already pulled out his phone, clearly debating whether to call his lawyer or simply flee before it became collateral damage in whatever legal nightmare was about to unfold. Officer Patterson shoved Luis into the back of the patrol car with more force than necessary, but his bravado was a thin veneer over rising dread. He slammed the door, circled to the driver's seat, and pulled out of the parking lot with screeching tires. For the first 3 blocks, neither of them spoke. Luis watched the officer's eyes in a rearview mirror, saw the calculations running behind them, the desperate search for an exit strategy that didn't end with his career in ruins. "Listen, son," Officer Patterson finally said, his voice strained, trying for reasonable and landing somewhere near desperate. "I think there's been a misunderstanding here, a miscommunication." Luis said nothing. "Your father, Judge McCarthy, he's a respected man. I'm sure he'd want this handled quietly, professionally. No need to make this into something bigger than it needs to be." The officer's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "Kids make mistakes. Rose can be enthusiastic sometimes. Maybe she misread the situation. Misread? Louise kept his voice flat. She broke that censor herself. Transfer my fingerprints to the tools, and called you to arrest me for a crime she committed. That's not a misreading. That's premeditated fraud and false imprisonment. Officer Patterson's jaw clenched. You don't know what you're talking about. You're just a kid who got in over his head. I'm the son of a superior court judge who just witnessed a police officer perform an unlawful arrest based on fabricated evidence provided by his own daughter. I know exactly what I'm talking about. Luis leaned forward as much as the cuffs would allow. And so do you? That's why you're not driving toward the station, Officer Patterson. You just passed a turn. The patrol car swerved slightly. Officer Patterson's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, meeting Luis's gaze. The mask finally cracked. What do you want? Money? I can make the customer complaint go away. Henderson will back off if I lean on him. Your record stays clean. Nobody needs to know about any of this. You're trying to bribe me now? Luis couldn't keep the disbelief from his voice. You're actually making this worse. I'm trying to solve a problem. Officer Patterson's voice rose, control slipping. You think you're the first kid to cry about unfair treatment? You think your father's position makes you special? This is my town. My family built relationships here long before some judge rolled in from. Pull over, Louis said quietly. What? Pull over and take these cuffs off. Right now. Or I promise you, every word of this conversation is going into my father's report, and attempted bribery of a witness gets added to your list of charges. Officer Patterson's breathing was ragged. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the air conditioning. He was trapped and he knew it. Every second Luis remained in cuffs. Every mile he drove away from proper procedure. Every word he spoke dug his grave deeper. The patrol car pulled to the curb on a quiet residential street. Officer Patterson sat frozen, staring straight ahead, a man watching his entire life collapse in real time. The cuffs, Luis repeated. Now. Judge Robert McCarthy arrived at Patterson Automotive 37 minutes after Luis's phone call. He didn't come alone. 2 federal investigators flanked him, along with a city attorney and a court stenographer. His presence transformed the grimy garage into something resembling a courtroom, authority radiating from him like heat from an engine block. Uncle David had managed to pull himself off the floor, but looked like he wished he hadn't. Rose stood near Bay 3, her earlier confidence shattered into something resembling terror. Mr. Henderson had vanished entirely, his Mercedes still on the lift like evidence at a crime scene. Officer Patterson had returned Luis to the shop 20 minutes earlier, the handcuffs removed, mumbling something about procedure and misunderstanding. He now stood rigidly near the entrance, his face ashen, while his patrol car's dashcam footage was already being downloaded to a federal hard drive. Judge McCarthy's eyes found his son first, scanning him for injuries with the practiced assessment of a father who'd worried. Luis gave a small nod. I'm okay. The judge's expression hardened further. Mr. David Patterson? Judge McCarthy's voice was measured, judicial, devastating in its calmness. Why, yes, Your Honor. David looked like he might vomit. You are the legal owner of this establishment? Yes, sir. Then you are hereby notified that this property is now part of an active federal investigation into civil rights violations, conspiracy to commit fraud, and abuse of authority under color of law. Judge McCarthy nodded to one of the investigators, who immediately began photographing the garage. All business records, security footage, parts inventory logs, and personnel files will be seized as evidence. You will not destroy, alter, or remove any documents from this premises. Your Honor, please, I didn't know. David's voice cracked. You didn't know? Judge McCarthy's gaze could have cut steel. You didn't know your niece was systematically harassing my son? You didn't know she fabricated evidence? Or did you simply choose not to know because intervening would have required you to stand up to Officer Patterson? David's silence was answer enough. Judge McCarthy turned to Officer Patterson. Officer, you are hereby suspended without pay pending a full investigation by Internal Affairs and the FBI. Your badge and weapon. Now. Rose lunged forward. You can't do this. My father was just doing his job. Your father, Judge McCarthy interrupted, his voice dropping to something dangerously quiet, arrested my son without probable cause, without reading him his rights, based solely on your uncorroborated testimony, despite documented evidence of your bias and hostility. He then attempted to coerce Luis into silence through bribery and intimidation, all captured on his own dash cam. He paused, letting the weight of those words settle over the garage. That's not doing his job. That's committing multiple felonies. Officer Patterson's hands trembled as he unclipped his badge. The metal clattered onto the concrete floor, the sound echoing through the silent garage like a judge's gavel. As for you, Miss Patterson, Judge McCarthy continued, turning his attention to Rose, you'll be charged with fraud, evidence tampering, and conspiracy. The district attorney will determine if you're tried as an adult or a juvenile, but given the premeditation and sophistication of your scheme, I suspect the former. Rose's legs buckled. She caught herself on the workbench, her face the color of old paper. Judge McCarthy looked at his son, his expression softening marginally. Luis, these investigators will need your full statement. Tell them everything, every interaction, every threat, every moment you felt unsafe or targeted. Yes, sir, Luis said quietly. The judge's gaze swept across the garage one final time, taking the frozen mechanics, the damaged Mercedes, the tools still scattered across Bay 3. This shop will remain closed until the investigation concludes. Mr. Patterson, I suggest you retain legal counsel immediately. You're going to need it. Uncle David nodded numbly. A man whose fear of challenging corruption had cost him everything he'd built. Justice, Luis thought, watching his father work with methodical precision, wasn't always swift, but when it arrived, it was absolute. 6 weeks later, Luis McCarthy stood in the parking lot of Patterson Automotive for the last time. The closed pending investigation. Signs still hung on the front doors, its edges already curling from weather and neglect. Weeds pushed through cracks in the asphalt. The place looked abandoned, haunted by its own corruption. Tommy approached from across the street, a slight smile on his weathered face. Heard you got placed at Morrison's garage. That's a good shop. Real good people. Yeah, Luis said. The owner called me personally. Said he'd heard what happened here and wanted to make sure I got a fair shot. He paused. How are you doing? I know the closure hit everyone hard. Tommy shrugged, but there was no bitterness in his expression. Found work at the dealership across town. Pays better, actually. Marcus, too. Most of us landed on our feet. He glanced at the closed shop. Sometimes a building needs to burn down before you can build something better. The federal investigation had moved with surprising speed once Judge McCarthy's involvement made it impossible to bury. Officer Jack Patterson faced 8 criminal charges, including false arrest, evidence tampering, attempted bribery, and conspiracy. His trial was scheduled for next month, and the district attorney had made it clear they were seeking prison time, not just suspension. Rose Patterson had been charged as an adult after prosecutors uncovered evidence that Louise wasn't her first victim. 2 previous interns had left Patterson Automotive under mysterious circumstances, both accused of theft or damage they insisted they hadn't committed. The pattern of behavior demonstrated a sophistication that couldn't be dismissed as youthful indiscretion. Her lawyer was negotiating a plea deal, but Rose's future would include a criminal record and likely probation at minimum. Uncle David Patterson had avoided criminal charges, barely, after he cooperated fully with investigators and testified about his brother-in-law's intimidation tactics. But the civil consequences were devastating. Mr. Henderson's lawsuit was only the first. The 2 previous interns Rose had filed their own suits once the truth emerged. The shop's insurance company refused to cover the claims, citing fraud. David was forced to sell the business to cover legal fees and settlements, and the property was purchased by a regional chain that promised to clean house entirely. The Patterson family's grip on local power had been broken, not by violence or scandal, but by the methodical application of law. It was exactly how Judge McCarthy had promised it would be. Louis's phone buzzed. A text from his father. "Proud of you. Dinner tonight?" He smiled and typed back a quick confirmation. His father had never apologized for not intervening sooner. Judge McCarthy maintained appropriate boundaries between his personal and professional life. But Louis understood that the investigation's thoroughness was its own form of paternal protection. His father had ensured that every I was dotted, every T crossed, so that no one could ever claim the outcome was preferential treatment. A black sedan pulled into the parking lot, and Louis recognized the driver immediately. Marcus emerged grinning. "Heard you were saying goodbye to this place. Thought you might want company." "Appreciate it," Louis said, genuinely touched. Marcus leaned against the sedan, studying the closed shop. "You know what the craziest part is? Rose actually knew engines. She could have been good at this. Really good. But she was so busy trying to prove she was better than everyone else, especially people who look like you, that she destroyed herself." Louis nodded slowly. It was tragic in its way. Rose had been handed every advantage: family connections, financial security, actual mechanical skill, and she weaponized it all to hurt people instead of build something meaningful. The waste of potential was almost as disturbing as the cruelty. "What happens to this place now?" Marcus asked. "Chain Garage is renovating. New management, new policies, new culture. They're hiring locally." Louis pulled out a business card from his pocket. "The new manager called me, asked if I knew any good mechanics who'd been unfairly pushed out. I gave him your name and Tommy's." Marcus's eyes widened. "Seriously? You stood by me, even when it was dangerous. You deserve better than you got here." Louis handed him the card. "They're paying above market rate, trying to rebuild the shop's reputation." Marcus took the card, studying it like it was a winning lottery ticket. "Thank you, man. Really." They stood in silence for a moment. 2 young men who'd survived a system designed to crush them, watching the sun glint off the closed garage doors. "You ready to go?" Marcus finally asked. Louis took one last look at Patterson Automotive. He'd come here hoping to prove himself, to earn his certification through honest work and skill. Instead, he'd learn harder lessons about corruption, courage, and the price of standing up for truth when everyone else chose silence. But he'd also learned that justice, though slow, was possible, that his father's courtroom wasn't just theoretical. It could reach into garages and patrol cars and places where authority had gone unchecked for too long. That systems could change when someone refused to be broken by them. "Yeah," Louis said, turning toward Marx's car. "I'm ready." Behind them, the Patterson Automotive sign creaked in the wind, a monument to what happens when power is abused and accountability finally arrives. Louis didn't look back again. His internship at Morrison's garage started Monday morning, and this time he'd walk in knowing that fairness wasn't just something he hoped for. It was something he'd fought for and won. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to Echoverse as we bring you more incredible stories. Kindly ensure to like and subscribe if you haven't.